Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey at the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China. Welcome! Today we're going to have a public service announcement about washing your belt. If you practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, understand it is important to wash your entire uniform. Not just the jacket and the pants, but the belt too. Because guess what? This thing gets just as dirty, contains all the same bacteria and fungus and mites as your uniform does when worn. Take a close-up look.
We are the tiny ugly germs. We are the tiny ugly germs. We are the tiny ugly germs that will make you sick.
Ew! And to think, this particular belt was brand new and has only been worn once. Man, I gotta level with you. I was reading about Staphylococcus yesterday. Staph infections. It's a big deal. It's one of the big mat-borne illnesses. Now, unlike some of the others like ringworm and scabies, which are annoying and unsightly and make you itch, well, staph can kill you. And here's the scary part. Staphylococcus is now, how can I put this? It has mutated. It's become a superbug. Antibiotics don't kill it anymore. If you don't know what staph is or why you don't want it, well, if you are squeamish, I'm not going to put it up on the screen here, but if you're squeamish, do not do a Google image search for Kevin Randleman staph infection. Rest in peace, Mr. Randleman. You were an asset to the sport of mixed martial arts, and you will be missed. But man, staph infection, it's no joke. If you think you might have it, go get it checked out. But man, the options to treat that are becoming slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So, do not take unnecessary risks. Wash your belts. Why don't people wash their belts in martial arts? Well, I'll tell you why. Because of this crazy American folkloric tradition. Yes, American, you heard me right. Belts aren't really that old or that traditional in martial arts. Belts were first used in judo around 1890. I don't have Wikipedia, so I can't look that up exactly, but around 1890 is when belts were first introduced. Jigoro Kano, the founder of Kano Jiu-Jitsu, which later became Kodokan Judo, he introduced the belt system, black belts for instructors and white belts for students. According to what I've heard, he got the idea from watching swimming teams, which in Japan at the time, the instructors wore a black band around their trunks and the students had a white band around their trunks, and he thought, hey, that's a good system to delineate students and teachers. Cool, I'm going to do that. And it wasn't until after his death, I don't remember the exact date, 1930 something, I'm thinking 1938. Go check that out, correct me in the comments. Man, that's when all the other belt rankings that we know today in Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were introduced. And it wasn't until after 1938 that all the other martial arts that use belt systems borrowed Judo's belt system and modified it and appropriated it for their own system. So if you belong to a martial art, karate, taekwondo, any of those Asian styles that use a belt and a traditional gi or dobok or something like that, that's borrowed from a tradition dating all the way back to when your grandma was a kid. So, or in some of your cases, when your parents were kids. So it's not that old, man. But where did that tradition come from, this very American idea that belts are ancient symbols of power and wisdom, and if you wash them, you'll wash away all of your magical belt powers? Because this persists. Man, I had a discussion online on this Jiu-Jitsu forum. Somebody posed the question, how many of you wash your belts? And I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Like 80% of the people polled said, no, I will never, ever wash my belt for any reason whatsoever. And somebody asked them, why? For those of you who will not wash your belts, why won't you do it? And and their reasons stemmed from its tradition to magic to I don't want unnecessary wear and tear on my special magical belt. You know what? If you don't like the wear and tear, get a new one. Because guess what? These things are cheap. They make them in China for pennies. Man. Belts, man. The only reason I tolerate belts in Jiu-Jitsu at all is because it's part of the sport, because you can grab it, because it's a nice handle. You can do certain techniques with your hands on the belt or your feet looped into the belt that you couldn't do without it. So if you're competing in the gi, yeah, it's a necessary component. But guess what? It's part of your uniform. Would you go to class without washing your gi? Would you go to class without washing your rash guard or your shorts or your jockstrap or whatever you're wearing? No, you probably wouldn't. And if you would, you're disgusting. Stop it. Fix that. Wash your stuff. This is no different. Wash it. Why? Scabies? That's mite infestations. Mites love to get into dirty fabric. And what do? They get on your skin. They burrow into your skin. They give you red rashes. They itch. And I've dealt with that. I have dealt with that training at some places where people didn't care about their personal hygiene and they didn't care about the health and safety of their training partners. So if you don't wash your belt, that is an insult to your training partners. Stop it. Put that in the washing machine, hand wash it, put some disinfectant on there. Do whatever it takes to sanitize that belt. Now, if you're not familiar with the folkloric tradition of not washing the belt, here's what it is. There's this belief that started in America sometime around the 1970s when karate started getting really popular, that in ancient times, when they wore these ancient belts that date all the way back to 1938, that the ancient samurai of Japan or whatever would start out with a white belt, and then from all their blood, sweat, and tears and rolling around in the dirt or whatever it was, the belt would eventually be stained a darker color until it became black, and then they would be a black belt. And that is false. That is such a nonsense story. Man, wash your belt. Jigoro Kano, the founder of Judo, the man who started the whole belt system that we all know and love or hate today. That man was immaculate in his appearance. That man was immaculate in his hygiene. Look up pictures of the man. Jigoro Kano had this neatly trimmed mustache. He had this firmly pressed suit. You look at him in his gi, and he's got that gi on in the most polished, posh way you can imagine, with his belt tied so neatly, and that thing does not look dirty at all. Man. Wash your belts if you don't do it already. I know some people are getting mad. They're like, but what about my precious little stripes? I don't want to wash them off. My coach gave me that. That means I'm good at grappling, and if I wash them, they might come off. It's sports tape, man. If your little stripy stripe comes off, put on another one. Get a roll of sports tape for $1 or less if you live in China or someplace like this, man. It's tape. And you know what? That tape gathers a lot of grime and dirt and fungus and all that nasty stuff in it too. So if it comes off, it comes off. It's replaceable. But you know what's not replaceable? The lives of your training partners. Don't be a murderer. Don't be a mat murderer. Don't spread the incurable mutant strains of Staphylococcus that are infecting us today, my friends. As you can see, this is an issue that concerns me greatly. Wash your belts. If you don't wash your belt, please tell me why in the comments down below. Why do you not wash your belt? Why would you subject your training partners to that kind of filth? Man, I feel like I'm going around in circles, but what if I told you a story? Well, I don't wash my gi. I let it get all stinky because I want it to eventually turn black with grime and wear and tear and blood and filth to denote my power and rank as a martial artist. You'd think I was a nut, wouldn't you? And you might be thinking, well, the belt's not that big. Well, guess what? Staph infections aren't that big either when they start. They're just little red nubs, and then they get bigger and bigger and turn into giant flesh-eating holes in your body, and they kill you, and they get into your blood, and they infect you. You don't want that. It all starts out small. Do you know how many billions of bacterial colonies could be living in this thing right now? If you did, you would wash your belt. I'm not big on gi training, but I'm big on cleanliness. Wash your belt. If you go to a gym, make sure that they wash the mats every day, multiple times a day. Make sure they wash them with disinfectant, something that will kill germs. And make sure you are rolling with training partners that wash their personal equipment, that wash their gear, wash their clothes, rash guards, shorts, gis, and belts. It is that important. Man, if you are rolling with a guy who looks like he's a brown belt, but it used to be white, but it got stained with filth, and he's walking around looking like a faded brown belt, run away! Get away from that dude. He is going to give you diseases. And I always hear people say, well, I haven't had any problem with it yet. You will. If you train long enough, the way that you should, you will be exposed to mat-borne illnesses, and you won't like them. And you'll never want to give them to anybody else. Man, unless you're a vindictive person and hate people. Is that why you don't wash your belt? Because you hate people? Because you hate your training partners and want them to slowly die an ignominious death? Is that why? Well, stop it! Wash your dang belts, guys! Well, that's the end of my public service announcement. Thanks for watching. Get out there and train, and wash your belts, or else.